I promised somebody I would make this video, and this seems quite a nice place to make it because it is an incredibly peaceful place. Being an empath, I think perhaps I should first describe a little bit what it is. I mean, anyone who is one probably already knows. It's hard to avoid, but it obviously is related to the word empathy. And empathy is not something you can feel specifically unless you've experienced whatever the person is experiencing that you're with, or certainly something similar or comparable. And other than that, you're really feeling sympathy, which is something entirely different. An empath is somebody who is kind of born without emotional edges, effectively, or possibly other types of edges. And the people who have that are across a huge range. I've met quite a number of people with autism who are empaths. Now this might sound like a complete contradiction in the theoretical definition of autism, but actually it's because they cannot stop what's coming in. So there's a lot of distress going on because you're not only experiencing your own feelings in response to something, you're feeling someone else's, and there is, for certain people, there is absolutely no way that that can be stopped. For some of the luckier few, you can put up filters in order to help yourself. And I'm going to explain a few of those. But before I do, I want to make it very clear that that is a kind of temporary state in some respects. You know, you kind of need to know what is yours and what isn't, but then again, in some respects, nothing is not ours. You know, if we are involved in something, if something is before us, then we are also a reflection of that. So it's not a good idea to blame somebody else or hold somebody else responsible for what you're feeling about what they're feeling, if you see what I mean. I'll give you an example. When I was in my teens, I was raised in London, and I used to go up to town, and I really struggled with it because I was just completely overwhelmed with all the feelings around me of any kind of random nature, and and there's a lot of distress in London, probably a lot more than is visible. So. I'd come back in pieces. The more recent times I've been to London, well, quite a long time now, it works not quite the other way. It's not as simple as this way or that way. But now I can connect with anybody, eye to eye, there. Now that might sound quite strange if any of Londoners are watching, because most people will know you do not make eye contact in London because there's just too many people. Psychologically, it's too much to bear for most. But I can be very open now, and people actually really like it. The number of smiles that I've got on the times that I have been to London has just been extraordinary, because people really appreciate that, just that little acknowledgement. But that, in order to do that, and in order to also be part of anything I'm part of, without it becoming immensely disturbing, has involved a kind of process. And also, learning what it works for you and what doesn't work for you. I am pretty hermit-like, because when I'm with somebody, I neither want to or ultimately am able to put up barriers between me and them. It doesn't seem a sensible idea. Anyway, so I want to be close to those that are prepared to be open themselves. Otherwise there's this kind of weird disconnect going on. I don't like partisan. So part of it is learning what you personally can and can't deal with, you know, what your kind of place in the pattern is really. That shifts and changes as well. So this is complicated if you start examining it. But in order to keep myself vaguely sane, what I needed to do in my teens was come up with various methods to kind of detach myself or to protect myself. Not to shut people out, but to... warmer in here, absolutely bitter outside today. Nice though. So I'll share these techniques with you, but then do bear in mind that it's effectively a temporary measure, or ideally a temporary measure, just so you can see what's what. Firstly, you can imagine that either you are wearing a kind of cloak all over you, one of those, you know, monkish type cloaks that go down to the floor, or that you're surrounding yourself with light, or that you've got a kind of egg round you, or really anything of that nature that suits your imagination. And what that is going to do, what you're aiming for that to do, is to keep out anything which is not specifically and personally yours. That doesn't mean you won't know what other people are feeling, but that you won't own things that have essentially nothing to do with you, but that you won't keep out anything connective. And it's surprising how well that can work if you've got a good imagination, which most empaths have. So before you leave the house for the day, just sit for a moment and imagine you're putting this thing on. And you will be aware still of what other people are feeling. I'll give you another example. I once remember somebody that was absolutely enraged about something and was attacking me. And what I could feel was that it was like someone throwing something at me, but it kind of was, I was still able to look at it, rather than it just kind of washing over me like a tidal wave, which had been the case before. And so actually I was more helpful, and it was more helpful because it helped me understand better and it helped me help better. But anything that is kind of, as I said, connective based rather than edges based can just come straight in because it's not of any harm. Because taking on board somebody else's stuff as your own, or getting it tangled up with you, when it can be quite unhelpful to all. Also, one last thing. If you do that, you will find, if you imagine that thing when you get back home, if you've been in a place where there's a lot of kind of stuff going on, that whatever you're wearing may feel quite tattered. You kind of get more comfortable with it. The other thing you can do is, if you feel particularly that you are taking on board something of somebody else's, and it's in an unhelpful fashion, because sometimes people have a lot invested in us owning their feelings, so that they don't have to take responsibility for them or do anything about them. A good way to do that is just to sit and imagine that there's a series of coat pegs, like you used to have when you were at school, usually infant school, I don't know what you call it over in America or wherever, but a sort of little row of pegs, and look along that row of pegs and see if there's anything belonging to anyone else hanging on those pegs, because this is effectively yours. And if you do see something hanging there, coat or scarf or a hat or anything really, just imagine yourself taking it off and very lovingly giving it back to the person in question. I believe this is yours. You can also imagine your own body. At the end of the day, if you imagine your own body and see if there's anything invading it, like a tentacle, if you like, and again you're wanting to let it go, not to harm the other person, but not to own it. You cannot own something of that nature. You cannot solve something of that nature whilst it's kind of entangled in your sense of self. So again, to sit quietly, imagine that you've got cool water running through you, and as you run that cool water through you, the tentacle, wherever in your body it feels to be, is just kind of washed away. It's kind of letting go, and again imagine as it comes out that you're returning it to the person in question in a gentle way. Just this is yours. I believe this is yours, and here it is, or whatever works for you. And just imagine that where that part of you is, because it can get quite sore when you're kind of, and it's you can do it to other people as well. Bear that in mind. It's not just about you are always the innocent party. It's no. Think about as well what you've invested in someone else, and whether you have got these things in them, or whether you've put coats on their pegs, and if you have, take them off. This is not to say that we're not, as far as I'm concerned, we're all totally interconnected anyway. So this is about a more conscious and needy sense, which is actually defines us as separate. So even though it's hooked in, it's actually confirming that separation. Another thing that you can do is at the end of the day, or whenever it feels appropriate to you, imagine a butler sink, or the sort of sink that you would find in a science lab at school. With a great big deep sink, and have a look in there and see if there's any gunk. Because quite often over time, even if there's nothing specific going on, nothing directly to one other person, we could pick up bits of crap, and then we behave. All our water, all ourself, as we pass things through this sink, is coloured by whatever gunk or colour we have allowed to go into this sink. In that kind of sense, it all becomes a conglomeration. So just tear that plug out. You don't need to know what it is, you don't need to blame anybody for it, just let it out. And if needs be, because you may find a kind of nasty scum, just turn the tap on, imagine you turn the tap on and wash it away. Now, as I've said, all of this is purely to learn the techniques of not taking things on board and fighting them, because that doesn't help, or owning them. And feeling responsible for everybody else, which a lot of empaths can have a great tendency to do, because then if they can rescue this other person, then whatever the feeling is that is washing over them will stop. But it doesn't work, it's not helpful. It actually it perpetuates that. So hopefully, and then it's once you've learnt to do that, once you have it's like when you dance. Something goes into your muscle memory when you've done it enough times, and so it just becomes automatic. You just do it without thinking. And with this, once you can kind of stop clinging, or stop owning, or stop needing to rescue, or just not be so completely overwhelmed by what's going on around you that you can't function, then because things are happening under the surface that just kind of make you able to move through things without doing that, then you can start to flow, and then you can start to become who you are in a much more effective way, both for you and for anything else, anyone else that is around you, anything else that you're part of, anything else you're connected with, which is pretty much everything that is around you. So I hope that's a little bit helpful.